My name is Justin the Clue, and I'm here today with
Will Sloan.
And you're listening to the Important Cinema Club. And today, swoosh, wham, pow, we're talking about Edgar Wright.
So first of all, I will always have some love in my heart for Edgar Wright for when he was filming Scott Pilgrim versus the World in Toronto. He had a series at the Bloor Cinema called The Wright Stuff, where he would play, his favorite movies. He would do that every week, basically, for 2 months. And that was the golden age of Toronto. That was back before this city turned into a frickin' shithole.
And during that time, I was friends with the manager of the Bloor Cinema, so little trailers that I made played before all of the Wright Stuff movies that he did. Well, almost, I think.
Wow. So, and he would come out and he would do intros. And
we're going to watch Busby Berkeley's Dames.
Oh, what a great screening that was, right? Nobody there had seen Busby Berkeley's Dames.
Absolutely not.
We all had a great time. Or like Police Story.
He also showed his own movies. I think he started it with that.
I mean, it was great too, because after a couple of weeks, the audience thins out a little bit when he's showing stuff that's a little bit more obscure. And so it kind of felt like this almost secret thing for a little while. Like, oh, this very famous filmmaker.
Yeah, it was really big at the beginning. And then as it kept going, like, not as full.
Yeah.
But that's what made it special. That you got to experience like the cinephilia of this guy who was in our town making a movie about our town.
About us. If you were Scott Pilgrim at the time, like I was.
I mean,
and perhaps you were too.
Literally at that time, was I dating a multicolored haired woman who is in the background of Scott Pilgrim along with every single one of my friends except for me? And I'm not bitter about it at all? Yes.
I mean, again, I've said this before. I'll say it again. Let's say you were 21 years old when that movie came out. Let's say that for the previous few years, everybody had compared you to Michael Cera because you looked like him, you talked like him. Mm-hmm. He was very famous at the time. You had the exact same level of masculinity as him. And then let's say you were hanging out in all the exact neighborhoods that he was in that movie.
I was literally always around that pizza where he eats, because that's where the Bloor Cinema is. So that's the corner we were at, which is the annex. Was I shooting Teddy Bomb while Scott Pilgrim was filming? So I was literally fighting my friend on camera? Yes, I was. So, right there, that's a movie for me and Will that was being made by Edgar Wright. Did Scott Pilgrim come out and I saw it in theaters and I went, yeah, that was pretty good. It wasn't as good as I wanted it to be. Yes. Have I learned to like it more? And
because you remember the boy you used to be.
Yes, of course I have. And Edgar Wright, I mean, listen. If you've seen any movie that I've made, you're like, Justin must be inspired by Edgar Wright. No, I am not. I lie. Yes, of course I have. Of course I have.
Well, I bring up all this at the start of the episode because I actually feel in recent years, over more recent movies, I felt myself very disenchanted with Edgar Wright. There were a couple of movies
no one can see me nodding
in a row. A couple of movies in a row that I didn't like all that much. Particularly
we'll get
the last
to it.
one.
Yeah.
And so that led me to kind of have a bit of a negative view of him overall.
Really?
Yeah.
You think that affected the rest of the work as well?
Well, because I hadn't seen Shaun of the Dead or Hot Fuzz or any of that in a long time.
No, I hadn't either. Now, is it baked into my very being and that's why I haven't watched it in a long time? Yes.
Sure.
But I can understand if you enjoyed his movies when they came out. And as we'll discuss, Edgar Wright has had long gaps between his films.
I thought he was more prolific than he was, actually, when we started doing this episode.
And because those films are representative of his style, and whether you think they work or not, if you have a negative reaction to them, they can kind of color everything that came before. And you go, did I like it that much?
Exactly.
Or was I a particular age when it came out?
Well, also because when Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, when that stuff was coming out, it was really big on DVD. Like, we were at the age of being like, I don't know, 16, 17, 18, that age where you're susceptible to that kind of thing. And I define that kind of thing as like, Tarantino-ish kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
Like
you got your DVD of Life of Pi, or probably Requiem for a Dream, let's be honest. Maybe Primer.
Not Life of Pi, Pi. Not the Tiger film.
Yeah, not the Ang Lee picture.
And like, if you're anything like we were, you like those directors like your Kevin Smiths, your Tarantinos, the cinephile man boy directors.
Yeah, and I don't think there were any ones that were more cinephiles than Edgar Wright. I would say a way that was approachable and as well, kind of wide-ranging, that he would introduce you to things if you are interested in them that you otherwise aren't aware of.
And I'm not going to say I ever disliked him or anything, but what I would say is,
I mean, when I'm not on the set of Scott Pilgrim with literally all my friends, Matthew, Peter,
Right.
Pierce.
Well, is that his fault or is that?
Yeah, he probably saw the audition tape I did with all my friends, and he's like, "Not that guy. Get him out of here."
Oh dear.
Please, in the background, Mr. Edgar. You don't need to see me.
Well, hey, he's still making movies. He can make it
give
up
me
to
a
you
call.
any time.
Okay. So I got to be very polite in the way that we continue this episode then.
But anyway, like, you get older and you feel a sort of fervor of apostasy for your younger self as well, especially when you see a movie like Baby Driver that comes along, and we'll get to it. But
Yeah, we'll get to it.
That comes along, and I'll just say, you're watching it in your maybe mid to late 20s, and you're like, ugh, I would have really liked this when I was 17.
Well, I remember
and I don't like that version of myself.
being in a sold out audience and like hearing people like really into it and looking around and being like, what am I missing? Am I too old now? Am I not getting it?
I was at that same screening. We were next to each other, and I remember looking around and kind of thinking, I don't know if I want to be one of these people, which is not, I'm not proud of that. Okay. But that's my relationship with the films of Edgar Wright until now.
Because you had to go back and rewatch them. So Edgar Wright doesn't have that much of a dramatic story. He grew up in a small town. He went to art school. He directed commercials. He directed television. And
Spaced.
Yeah, Spaced.
Which I've never seen.
Wow, you've never seen Spaced?
Yeah, I don't know. Don't know how I missed it.
I may have been a huge fan of Edgar Wright when only Spaced exist, because
Wow.
there were clips of it that were shared on a forum I was on, and then I went and checked out the whole series, and I went, this is a guy that is speaking my language. So if you're coming from like Sam Raimi love, George Romero, all of that is present in Spaced. It is like a cornucopia of just like references and character and comedy. It's fully formed of what you would see later in Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
So at the Bloor Cinema back in 2009 or whatever, did you see the all-day Spaced marathon they did?
Did I? I don't know if I saw that one. Edgar Wright did give me a copy of Spaced that he signed himself just as a thanks for doing all the stuff. And I went, oh man, thanks. And did I have 2 copies of it at home already? The British version and the North American release? Yes, but now I have 3.
Wow.
So I'm happy. And I remember seeing Spaced, and I liked it so much that the short films I was making at that time, I vividly remember stealing sound effects from episodes and using. And what sound effects could it be? Maybe swooshes? In the short films that I made myself.
I also think, I don't know where this fits in, but I also think what we think of as the Edgar Wright style, I'm not saying it wasn't there, and it was obviously there in Spaced.
Yeah, absolutely. It was 100% there in Spaced.
With Scott Pilgrim, I think it went to Scott Pilgrim and Baby Driver sort of took that Edgar Wright style to comically maximalist extremes.
You know what?
You know what I mean?
I would say that it is at its like most powerful in Hot Fuzz, but because the tone is different, it doesn't feel as jarring as it does in some of the later movies.
Okay.
So you watched Shaun of the Dead again, right?
Yes, I did. Now, this is the international breakthrough. It's not his first film.
I'm following on Ain't It Cool News as all the, test screening reviews are coming out, being like, yeah, he did it.
Not his first film. He'd already done Fistful of
Fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
But Fistful of Fingers is one he did like when he was a teenager. It's a Zucker Brothers style parody that for some reasons, when you see the movie, I mean, it's a Western parody, you can probably make some guesses. It has not been released since then.
Yeah, it's not that great.
Yeah,
but whatever.
That too. That's not what I was alluding to, but think Western parody made by teenagers.
Oh, yeah, I see.
It's funny enough. You can see the kind of gags and his style is present. I mean, if you get the Hot Fuzz Blu-ray, there's like an hour-long movie called Dead Right, which is like a crime comedy that he did with his friends as teenagers. That's basically what Fistful of Fingers is.
So watching Shaun of the Dead this week, and I feel like we don't need to say the plot of this.
No, we don't.
Y'all have seen Shaun of the Dead.
If you're listening to this and you haven't seen Shaun of the Dead, you're probably 12 years old. Thanks for listening to every episode of the Important Cinema Club. I would recommend it. I think it still works.
I loved this movie watching it again. I was kind of blown away by it, actually, and I was really surprised.
So did it make an impact when it came out, or did you just see it and you went, this is good?
Oh, it made an impact.
Okay, because I love this movie when it came out. I showed everybody this movie.
Yeah, okay. I was probably never as huge an Edgar Wright fan as you were, but I liked him.
Yes.
I liked him, and he was somebody whose movies I looked forward to actively.
I remember right before the Right Stuff screenings, Malcolm Ingram, a friend of Kevin Smith.
That's right. He directed the documentary about him.
We were driving around giving flyers.
You and Malcolm Ingram?
Yeah, I said the story
You were hanging
before.
out with Malcolm Ingram?
I think it was for the Kevin Smith screenings. And because remember, he did it at the
Kevin
Bloor.
Smith also did his own thing.
And I remember saying, like, Edgar Wright's one of my favorite filmmakers. And Malcolm Ingram was like, what are you talking about? The man has made 2 movies. Because at that point, he only made Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz.
Yeah, well,
and I was like, well, I don't know. I'm just a big fan.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's how early that like I was telling people this when you speak of like fandom and things like this. But so when Shaun of the Dead came out, like it clicked with me instantly. It had all the stuff. I mean, my love of movies was cemented watching George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, my favorite movie of all time. So if you're gonna make a zombie movie that is clearly a love fest to his movies, of course I'm going to react to it. Especially when like what works about Shaun of the Dead so much. I don't want to harp on this too long because anyone who's watched all of Edgar Wright's filmography knows this. It's like the Simon Pegg of it all, right?
So the Simon Pegg of it all, of course, I was thinking about watching these movies.
It's impossible not to.
Yeah, because I thought, you thought, we all thought that once he stopped making movies with Simon Pegg,
something is lost.
The movie stopped being as good. And who knows how much of it.
I've read interviews with Edgar Wright where he's like, Simon Pegg barely shows up. Like everybody says, like the core emotional stuff is Simon, but it's me.
Do they not get along?
I think they still get along. Yeah. But I think that,
I also want to say that Simon Pegg's career afterwards fucking sucks.
It's not good. I mean, I think he would say that as well.
Yeah.
But that like, when you watch Shaun of the Dead, like there's all the silliness present in all the other movies, but there's also a groundedness to the performances.
Exactly. Yeah. And not just the performances, but just
the emotional
the characters and their struggles and everything. And so watching Shaun of the Dead, I was kind of amazed that like, how did this come 10 or 15 years before Baby Driver? Because Baby Driver feels, and I'm saying this as neutrally as possible, very childish. But this movie feels like the work of somebody who's like, in early middle age or like has felt disappointment, It's weird because,
Shaun of the Dead, like the groundedness of it, I watched Baby Driver, I think first to be like, all right, I want to see this. And then I'm going to watch the other ones, which I'm very familiar with, and compare and contrast. And there's just something that like, no matter what is happening in Shaun of the Dead, no matter how silly it gets, and it gets silly, that there is just that element of believability that you're following these people and you care about what happens to them. They are not just kind of symbols that are there to serve the style around them.
Well, in Baby Driver, you've got, what the hell's the guy's name?
Ansel Elgort.
I almost said Alden Ehrenreich.
Well, easy to confuse.
Ansel Elgort, who is like a model, and he's beautiful and he's textureless.
Yeah.
But in Shaun of the Dead, you've got Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, as well as the whole galaxy of British supporting actors around them.
What's great about those movies is like you wouldn't expect them to star in a film. And right there, you've already got like a great jumping off point.
Well, they're obviously, they're friends. I assume they're friends, and they have a very textured friend dynamic to them. But also just their screen presences. They've got the nicks and scratches of life to them.
Absolutely.
They're also like just great comedians in general. Like their comic timing is impeccable.
Just the way they deliver a line, you're like, instantly iconic in the way that you say it. It's also that like Shaun of the Dead, and this was also the case with Spaced, it's filled with references to movies that are not annoying, that are not like, look at this. Like maybe Nick Frost yelling like, we're coming to get you, Barbara, when they're talking about Simon Pegg's mom. But there's also like when you start going behind the scenes stuff, or you hear Edgar Wright and Simon Pegg talk about them, the kind of like puzzle box constructions they have in them is very attractive. That you're like, oh, there is an autorial vision here of like a line at the beginning will pay off in a different way at the end. You don't need to get it, like you don't need to follow it, but if you're paying attention, then there's that instant like adrenaline rush of I see what you did there. That is not done in an annoying way because it is so kind of baked into what they're doing.
Well, they are beautifully constructed, those movies. And as to the genre parody element of them, there's a fun tension in those movies between the Edgar Wright style, muscular and hyperactive, and like lots, as you say, lots of swooshes and whooshes and all that stuff, mixed with what it's actually depicting, which in Shaun of the Dead, it's middle-class London life.
Yeah, that's the joke, right? That like the big Sam Raimi montage zooming in on stuff is just him getting ready for work.
Yeah, or that long scene where Simon Pegg is, going to the corner store.
That's done all in one long take.
Yeah.
And the joke there is that you see it the first time, and then when the zombie apocalypse happens, you see it again with all the elements that were present the first time, but that's the joke.
Now compare that to the huge long take near the beginning of Baby Driver.
Oh man, we're really raking Baby over the coals here.
And actually, I feel bad about this a little bit because Baby Driver is entertaining.
Yes. I mean, I watched it with Emily, and I was like, but what about this and this and this? And she's like, I just thought it was fun. And I was like, well, you got me there.
Lots of people love Baby Driver.
They're the biggest success Edgar Wright's ever had.
And I'll tell you, as I was watching it this week, it did kind of wear down my defenses a little bit, just because it's like It's really fast paced.
Yeah.
You know, it's got a lot of good actors in it.
I mean, the issue
I still don't like it.
It's so hollow, though.
That's the thing. Yeah.
And like, I kept watching it being like, I even watched a little bit of Walter Hill's The Driver, and I was like, why does this work? But like Baby Driver, which Driver was one of its clear inspirations, like, the thing about Baby Driver is, and this is just my opinion, it's not cool.
No.
But the whole thing is it has to be cool. And that's the thing about Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz is that they're so uncool that they become cool if you like those things.
Well, I might also compare Baby Driver a little bit to Pulp Fiction, which is another like uncool guy. Pardon the judgment, but I'm just going to say,
listen, we say it as we see it, right?
An uncool guy who's been given like the keys to the castle to make his vision of what cool is. And in Pulp Fiction, which I don't love or anything, but like I think there's an interesting tension in that movie too of like he's so weird, and so the things that he thinks are cool like are sort of like they're all dressed like Chow Yun Fat, and
but none
like
of these things
stuff
are cool at this time either,
right?
Like it's just what they particularly love.
Exactly. Well, yeah, in Pulp Fiction, exactly.
Yeah, Pulp Fiction, yes.
And so it's all these uncool elements, but just the sort of sheer swagger of it, the sheer confidence of it, mixed with the actors that he chooses, mixed with I don't know, just wherever the winds of fashion are at that moment. Everything, the light shines on it in such a way as to make it the coolest thing ever. Whereas with Baby Driver, I don't know. I feel like the alchemy isn't quite there, where it's like it's a very slick movie, but it's not eccentric the way that Pulp Fiction is, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it wants to be. All right, I want to get back to Shaun of the Dead.
Okay, Shaun of
though.
the Dead.
So in Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, Scott Pilgrim, those are the films that I would want to make. A zombie film, an action film that's also a giallo, and then a martial arts film that's set literally in the place that I'm living. And I was a fan of Scott Pilgrim back in high school as well. I read the first and second volume when they came out.
Yeah, I loved the comics too at that time. Because, for the same reason I loved the movie, which
because
is like,
it's representative
this is like me.
Yeah.
Duffer and Maul is in a comic book. I can't believe it.
And Shaun of the Dead was also like the little movie that could. Like, so I followed it. It came out, didn't make any waves, but was huge on DVD. Like, became a cult hit, became iconic in a way that like they couldn't have even imagined when they were making the film.
Totally side note, but I was reading an issue of Sight and Sound from 2004.
What? Was Edgar Wright in Sight and Sound?
No, he wasn't.
Oh, he's in there all the time.
I'll tell you who was on the cover of it. Michael Moore. And it was the Cannes issue, and it's just amazing. You're reading about the Cannes Film Festival that year, and of course, all anybody cares about is Michael Moore.
Fahrenheit 9/11.
Yeah. And then you're reading about all the other movies that were there, which are like Old Boy, Tropical Malady, 2046.
So like the real classics that will matter and will stand the test of time.
Yeah, like Hong Sang-soo is there. Just an incredible like lineup of movies that people still watch and mean a lot to people today. And Fahrenheit 9/11.
What are you talking about? The movie that maybe somebody sitting at this table may have launched a whole podcast on?
Hey, I care about Michael Moore.
Yeah, exactly.
Why do you think I'm reading the issue? Yeah.
Now, Hot Fuzz, great movie. Love it. Seen it a million times.
It's great. Yeah.
And it does the thing that it does differently what Shaun of the Dead does, where like it's so kind of maximalist, it's so broad, but it still works because you have all these British character actors. It bites off more than it can chew, but it still pulls it off in a way.
Well, it's the same interesting tension of like as an action pastiche, it works on the level of being an action movie. The last act of the movie with
it's
all
just like a full-on action film.
It's genuinely exciting, but also it pays respect to the physical reality of these guys in this town.
But it's not kind of grounded in the same way as Shaun of the Dead, which is like, oh, you could see yourself or you know somebody like Shaun, but it still works because just the actors have so much heart and emotion to them that even when they're saying kind of like goofy one-liners, they're grounded in the reality of the small town that it's set, even though it's heightened.
And knowing that he's from a small town, I mean,
they shot in his small town.
It feels very lived in and textured, and hey, how great is Timothy Dalton?
I love Timothy Dalton. Why don't we see Timothy Dalton in more movies? Isn't that weird?
I know. I wish somebody does somebody own the rights to like a James Bond novel that they like, can we get him back?
Yeah. Well, because I don't think he does really anything. Maybe he does British television and I don't see it. But
yeah, it's too bad. He's great. I love him.
Love him. And so after Hot Fuzz came out, again, another movie that I showed literally everyone when I first moved to Toronto. Oh, wow, it's our first date. We need to watch a movie. Why don't I put on this 2-hour and 1-minute film?
This is your first date movie, Hot Fuzz.
Or Shaun of the Dead, probably. Yeah. If we end up at someone's house and I'm throwing a movie on, because I'm like, this is amazing. Yeah. I'm sure they laughed.
Did it work?
Oh, yeah, it worked.
Okay. It's none of my business, but whatever.
And then Scott Pilgrim comes out, and then The World's End, which almost seems like a reaction to Scott Pilgrim, which had not done well financially.
Well, this was actually a surprise to me revisiting this movie because I liked this movie.
But you're probably like, yeah, it's fine.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And there's a consensus about this movie, or there's a line about this movie, which is the first half is so great. And then it does the dusk till dawn thing where it turns supernatural halfway through. And
But
then it's
is that surprising? Like,
well, what I've heard people say, and I saw an interview once with Wright where he said something like, critics say that the second half it should have stayed the first half, and maybe it should have, but the movie wouldn't have been made if it stayed the first half. No,
it wouldn't have. And I mean, he's interested in the stuff that happens in the second half because he likes those things. I remember The World's End was so secret that when I saw a screening of it at the Fantasia Film Festival, no one knew what it was about. Like, no trailers had come out. We didn't know what the premise was. So we were all sitting in the audience being like, what is going to happen in this movie? And I remember seeing it the first time and being like, yeah, I kind of like that. Probably the same reaction that you did, which was like, I think maybe my reaction was only because Edgar Wright was so big in my mind that I want to be like bowled over, and it's impossible to fit those expectations.
At that point, when Hot Fuzz has become legendary in your personal pantheon.
Exactly, yeah. It's like, well, the next one's going to be like that too, right?
But I don't know, if you watch this movie 10 years later just on your TV. I think this movie is really good, and also I think it's a much more unified experience than I had given it credit for. Like, the issues raised in the first half are developed in that second half.
And we didn't talk about it, but like Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, those are like, very in-your-face movies in his style, but the stories themselves are fairly complicated, that the journeys they go, like Edgar and Simon, when they talked about the movies, they're like, yeah, Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz don't really have happy endings. Like, one of them, the guy regressed to what he had before. The second one, they have become fascists that have been just accepted by the entire town, and that's their way of life now. But because of the way they do it, it's really fun and just to watch, even though it ends in these kind of like, let's rate it as slightly dark places. And The World's End is dealing right from the get-go with very dark material of like, can we go back to what we had, which it's impossible, even though Edgar Wright was still fairly young when he made this movie. It's like him looking back after Scott Pilgrim and being like, can we go back to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz? Like, do I still have it in me?
Yeah, I mean, I think Simon Pegg's great in this movie, but also, I mean, I think anybody, even if you are as famous as Edgar Wright is, like anybody in their mid to late 30s kind of has that feeling of like,
am I not cool anymore?
Am I not cool anymore? But also, like, all his friends in this movie have moved on and become like comfortably upper middle class, and there's part that's like, well, to what extent do I miss the past? Like, can the past ever be recaptured? Was the past like, they in this movie they go to these bars that they used to go to, and they've been gentrified, basically
Starbucked.
And like, I think that's a powerful thing that the movie gets at too. The whole second half, where everybody are basically pod people in the second half, like, there's a bit of a like, the movie is actually a bit ambivalent about, it's not just saying that the Simon Pegg character needs to move on. It's also saying, yeah, but isn't it a little sad that he has to move on? Isn't it sad that the past has been steamrolled?
They actually worked backwards of like, we want Simon Pegg to end up where he was at the beginning of the film, which the film is almost saying like, you got to move on. But he does end up there, but more evolved than he was when he was a teenager. And they actually started with that concept. And they talk about in interviews, like, at one point it was a time travel story where they did go back in time, and they figured out like, all right, because we want to bring the young people versions of them. And I remember when I saw the movie for the first time, the kind of things that I bounced off of, like, I was so many whooshes. I was like, all right, enough of these whooshes. Or the pans of someone. Now I'm like, give it to me. Yes, please. I love it. And like the kind of like thorny stuff that it deals with, and an ending that can seem unsatisfying if you don't realize like it is by design. Like, all the fights that they have, which are really fun, choreographed by sadly passed away Brad Allen, who did Scott Pilgrim, was a Jackie Chan team stunt member, choreographed a bunch of Jackie Chan movies.
Brad Allen's the one in Gorgeous, right?
Yep, that's right. He's the one that fights Jackie Chan in that picture. Like, they seem almost empty and unbeatable fights. That's the point. You can't defeat these things. It's like you are trying to fight against something that will overwhelm you no matter what you do.
I think the movie is interestingly ambivalent about the passage of time. It's not simple about whether or not the passage of time is a good thing or not.
No, or like, does humanity at the end of the day, like, should they get a chance to continue? Like, if they're kind of poison and their emotions can't control and they're going in self-destructive cycles, should it continue, and they don't really come to any conclusion, because like the movie can be sad, it can be happy, depending on how you view it and the way that it ends it, which I remember seeing for the first time. I was like, oh yeah, that is definitely a choice, one that is so kind of out there that it almost took me out of it a little bit, but watching it now, I'm like, oh yeah, it works. I love the way that it ends up, and the older you get, the more you see yourself in the world's end. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's another thing. Now that I am in my mid-30s.
Yes.
Yeah.
You can see like, yeah, trying to relive the memories. Hey man, it's time for another 24-hour horror movie marathon. Justin, we're so old, we can't do it. No, come on, we can do it. I'm putting on my leather coat that I used to wear when I was in my 20s. Let's go out.
Did you wear a leather coat? Like
not a big duster.
A big Chow Yun-Fat style?
No, I never went there. I had like a leather or like probably a faux leather kind of like jacket that I wore in the fall all the time until it literally like ripped apart, but that was pretty much it. My friends say that my trademark thing is I used to wear like a striped hoodie that all the time. And I went, yeah, I guess it was probably whatever's on the shelf and I just picked it up.
I can't remember any of my old clothes.
No, probably because they weren't very memorable.
Once they're done,
they're gone.
Out of there. Yeah.
Yeah. Will it protect me from the elements? Yes. Thank you very much. Which is to say, I'm announcing I'm getting a mohawk. I'm going to wear a long duster from now on out.
You're wearing a mohawk. You're going to take down Senator Palatine. Yeah.
So this movie, though, like, it's interesting because it feels like the end statement. Almost as like, okay, please stop bothering us about Nick Frost, Simon Pegg movies. Like, we need to go off and do our own things now. Like, Edgar Wright, like his goal was probably to make Hollywood film, like, work with big budgets, but to still be able to do it in his voice.
Now, I think the Ant-Man debacle has become sort of legendary, just in the sense that, like, if you're thinking about Marvel and what they represent, that's an important incident just in showing the limits of what they represented. Like, because you remember the first few years of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, quote unquote, it's easy to forget a lot of like fanboy types. I don't mean that derisively. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, maybe I do. But like they were uncontroversial, just artistically.
Well, they hired like the journeymans, whoever journeyman.
Well, but they also got like Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah, but he was doing a journeyman's job at that point.
Yeah.
And they also hired Joe Johnston, the director of Jurassic Park 3. And I love Joe Johnston, but you hire him to do that.
But like the firing or the parting of ways with Edgar Wright when he was doing Ant-Man was a sort of signal that's like, these are going to be like, the director is not the author of these movies.
Edgar Wright said it himself. He said, they want to make a Marvel movie. They did not hire me to make an Edgar Wright movie.
Right.
And I want to make an Edgar Wright movie. I don't want to have to like direct traffic. So
right.
I'm going to go do something else instead.
Yeah. And one wonders if, I mean, I don't know, it's funny, like Baby Driver made so much money, but one wonders if he's been limited by, I mean, he hasn't been that prolific.
No, yeah. He's had like a bad case of the attaches where he's attached to a million things to the point that there is a Wikipedia page where you can see everything that like he wrote scripts for them. He and Joe Wright were supposed to do a bunch of stuff together. They did the pass on The Adventures of Tintin. He's credited as a screenwriter of that with Joe Wright.
By the way, I'm sorry I said fanboy a minute ago. I don't like that term.
You don't like that? You're not a big fan of the movie Fanboys?
Oh, well, that was a masterpiece. Especially
Harry Knowles is going to give us the tip to go see Phantom Menace.
Especially Harvey Weinstein's post-production meddling on it.
Oh, yeah, you want to see the original cut of Fanboys. Where is it? Before they reshot it 10 times.
Yeah, I'm sure that made it. I'm sure it was better before this.
Anyway. But so Edgar Wright, like following his career, it's like he's attached to this, he's attached to that. And you don't get the sense, though, like looking at what he's attached to. I mean, I did not see the movies, but they didn't seem like stuff that me personally I was very excited about. Like, oh, he's attached to, a young adult novel about giant grasshoppers. And it's like, cool, I guess.
Well, he's making The Running Man now with Glenn Powell. And I'm not that excited for it.
No, but I will be there.
Yeah.
But like, you get the sense like he just wants to make bigger movies than he did. Like, it's probably tough to make Sean Hot Fuzz The World's End. Like, you're working within the limitations that are presented to you.
Sure.
And then with Baby Driver, when he got all the money, and I mean, boy, if there was ever a movie for me, it's like, it's really inspired by Walter Hill's The Driver. It's about an action movie set to music. I'm like, I love musicals. I mean, this is made for me.
Maybe he would disagree, but Baby Driver, whatever its faults, does feel like a kind of uncompromised vision of his on a big scale.
But I wonder, like, there's like just weird structural issues about Baby. Like, when I'm going to start talking about it, it's going to sound so like nitpicky about like this and that, but it's all those things kind of add up that like, I remember sitting there being like, yeah, every time I watch Baby Driver, for the first 30 minutes, I'm like, well, man, why don't I like this movie? It's musical. Ansel Elgort's not really doing anything for me, but Kevin Spacey, boy, yeah, him in this role, not good.
Really?
I don't like him.
Okay, listen, I'm no Kevin Spacey fan.
Yeah.
I think he's fine
But
in
he's
this
like
movie.
rhyming all his lines. It just feels forced in a way
Okay, the whole movie feels forced.
that I feel that people that don't like Edgar Wright's films, that's how they feel when they watch the films. It's like, it feels forced. There's too much going on. Like, that's what I feel watching it. And the big issue with the film, it's not very funny.
No.
And I think that, like, I know it wants to be cool, but any of the comedic stuff that it does doesn't really work for me. And one of the biggest killers of the film is the romance. There's nothing there.
It's terrible. There's no chemistry. She's a horrible character. We all know.
Yeah, everyone said this already. Yeah.
It's tiring to say that. I mean, what my best defense for Baby Driver, and I don't want to defend it, is that, like, it's pacey and there's a lot going on and it's well made. So like when you're watching it, like you're entertained. There's like,
it's entertaining.
It's zipping by.
It feels,
but it's hollow.
Yeah, and there's not quite enough. It's a movie called Baby Driver where, in my opinion, the best action scene happens in the beginning.
Yeah.
And you keep waiting for that to come back. And it just feels kind of anticlimactic. I don't know if there were issues while shooting. The final big climax is in a parking garage for some reason.
I think the climax works, basically.
It's okay. You know what? Again, this is me putting Edgar Wright's work on a pedestal and being like, imagining a version of the movie that it can never live up to. But there's enough elements there that don't work for me, that doesn't click. But hey, man, I don't speak for the people. The people ate this up. It made tons of money. So what do I know?
Well, I don't have anything nice to say about Last Day in Soho.
Last Night in Soho.
I didn't revisit it for this. Did you watch it?
Yeah, I mean, I can see what he's trying to do with this movie.
Ah, yes, that great compliment. I can see what he's trying to do.
I don't want to dig up Last Night in Soho.
But let's not even talk about it.
Go on Letterboxd. I wrote a review when I saw it at TIFF. Like, there's choices in it. Like, I can't believe there's like CGI ghost people being like, oh, and it's like, no, what?
And like, you know, everyone said this, but like the sexual politics of this movie are like
very confused.
Yeah, it's like it's trying to be very woke in a way that ends up being not at all.
Yes, well, it's woke right at the end, and you're like, well, what about everything that came before that? And it's a film that is interesting when you compare it to the rest of everything that came before. So basically, like, everything Edgar Wright makes is in conversation with what has come before. And Last Night in Soho cannot be a giallo, even though that's what it should be, because that's what Hot Fuzz is. So it's trying to push up against those things, and by consequence, you get kind of nothing.
Well, yeah, and like ultimately it comes down, the conclusion that it comes to with this character is like, you know, it tries to do this like kind of very male feminist thing of being like, oh, isn't it terrible that all these men who were the Johns were like
abusive,
so terrible to her? Isn't it awful that they came one after another and just sullied her and destroyed her and ruined her? And that's like, whoa, back up.
Sex work is okay.
Yeah,
it's okay.
Well, it's like she doesn't have to fucking die at the end because she's been so sullied by these men, you know?
And that
sorry,
movie.
this is unpleasant, but
and you know, again, but I could see he can whiff, like, it cannot work for me. Like, I love the idea of him trying to make a like Repulsion style movie, or all the other like British films that inspired or were in that style that no one's really making around that. But it just butts into like performances that feel too mannered, don't feel lived in. It's too artificial.
Yeah.
And like, I'm sure Edgar, my good friend.
Yeah.
He would say like, but I did all this stuff to not make it feel artificial. And I go, I don't know what to say. Like, I'm just looking at it. And I was like, maybe you should work with Simon Pegg. And he's like, I don't want to work with Simon Pegg.
Well, anyway, he's still one of your favorite filmmakers,
he is,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I will see, like, if there's a preview screening, a press screening, I will be there, like, number one to see the movie the second that I can. Even if it's The Running Man. A premise that excites me not at all.
Right.
Glenn Powell's charm. He can bring the charm, right? Superstar Glenn Powell.
Right. And you know, Edgar Wright, if you're listening,
I'm sorry.
It was really wrong of you to not give Justin a role in Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
I don't want a role. I just want to be in the background.
And you can make things right.
Every one of my friends. Literally. All of them.
You can make things right. You know, hey, maybe Justin would have given Last Night in Soho a good review if you just.
Matthew Kumar wrote at one point like, "Oh, I'm not in Scott Pilgrim." Back when we were on Facebook, and Edgar Wright commented, "Oh no, Matthew, you're in the film. Like you're in the scene."
Oh, he rolls out the red carpet for Kumar, but
not me though, not me. But yeah, so Edgar Wright, a lot of complicated emotions there, but I will continue to watch your films probably. Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz, listen, I will probably watch it again in 10 years and be like, man, this movie's good. I've seen it enough for 10 lifetimes.
Yeah.
So Baby Driver, will I convince myself in that Soderberghian fashion where I keep watching like one of the Soderbergh films being like, no, I should like this until I come around to it? Maybe.
And when Justin dies, we're going to bury him with his Scott Pilgrim DVD.
No, don't do that. You bury me with, let's be honest, Clerks.
Clerks, yeah.
And you'll be beside me with your copy of Clerks 2.
We'll be in the same coffin, embracing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And Kevin Smith's commentaries will play on loop to just lull us into sleep. The last thing I want to say about Edgar Wright is I just wish he made more movies.
Sure.
That I feel like, and I mean, he could definitely speak to us to be like, I'm trying so hard. But he feels like a filmmaker. If he could do in 2 years, I would love to see the stuff that he could do and the kind of like exploration of the genres and the experiments that he does. And you know what? I'm going to be really excited when the next one comes out. He did do a Sparks documentary, which we didn't talk about. It's good. Have you seen it?
Didn't see it, no.
Yeah, it's very good. You know, if you don't know Sparks, definitely check it out. So, as per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com. Our first letter is Peck and Paw Predicament. Hey, Justin and Will. First time mailer, fairly new avid listener here with a question for you guys. I recently attended a screening of Bring Me the Head of Alfredo Garcia at my local cinema here in Ottawa. While I wasn't as enthusiastic about it as some of the other Peck and Paw films I have seen, I really enjoyed its sweat-dripping, nihilistic subject matter, and the Peck and Paw-esque action was great as always. As I do lately with some of the directors I dip back into your library to see your thoughts on the director. And much to my surprise, you had not done a Peck and Paw episode. I thought, I suppose they think he's talked about too much in film circles. Yes.
I would do a Peck and Paw episode in a heartbeat. I love it.
I don't think we've ever pitched him, have we?
No, I feel like I talked about Straw Dogs on a microphone with you at some point.
Yeah, what was that in concern to?
Was it just a Stuff We've Been Watching episode?
I feel like we went into it in depth. I don't remember what it was.
I think so too. Maybe we did a Patreon episode on that.
And you did talk about Alfredo Garcia when you saw it recently as well. While I enjoyed the little bonus discussion, he mentions that you talked about Garcia.
Okay.
Like any ravenous cinephile listener, God sarn it, I want more. After all, I've only seen that one, Cross of Iron and Straw Dogs, where do I go from here? I'll even take a bad Films of Peck and Paw episode or something like that. Anyway, sorry for being so forceful. Love the podcast. Thanks for all the entertainment on those dreary morning drives into Orleans, which is where I used to live. Orleans. That's I have to go from Algonquin College to Orleans where my dad lived. Keep up the great work, Scott.
Okay, I'm going to blow your mind with this take. I like Sam Peckinpah.
What?
I think he's a good director.
And wait, what's that? Even the bad ones have some kind of value to them in the way that they've been kind of reconsidered over the last couple decades?
So if we never do an episode on him,
we will
at some point, I'll just say I'm pro. And also, if you're looking for another one to watch that's a little underappreciated, check out Junior Bonner.
Yes. Especially, it's not in that violent style that Peckinpah is most famous for, but it's really fun. And you see all of his preoccupations in it as well. Mm-hmm. So our next letter is from James, and he goes, Justin and Will, I finally caught up and I've listened to your entire castography. Never heard it called that before.
Castography, yeah.
It took me a year and a few months, but I'm finally able to answer the question that started it all. Yes, Jerry Lewis is a genius. I feel like we've come to that conclusion.
That was the first episode. It was called Is Jerry Lewis a Genius? And, as a measure of how I've grown, I don't think I would be at all ambivalent about that question today.
Now, before we say something like, oof, sorry about that, we never apologize for anything.
No.
I want to stop you right there and get a bit sappy. I was first introduced to you guys through another listener and my best friend, Nick. Is this Simon Pegg who sent us a letter? We listen regularly now and talk about the pod a lot. That's nice. I cannot imagine two people talking about us doing a podcast.
I will say the absolute truth, which is that when Justin and I get in front of these microphones, we do not think about the audience at all.
No. If we did, we'd be much more successful.
I think we would also be paralyzed.
Yeah, probably.
Right.
And also, are you having a little bit of erectile dysfunction? Well, Blue Chew will help you out.
Yeah.
The letter continues. You two have truly been a huge staple in how I experience cinema. Will, I look forward to your eloquent and challenging reviews that I always find myself agreeing with. And Justin, enjoy your ability to lift up a movie and filmmakers with optimism, which always gets me excited to check it out. And of course, you guys introduced us to Matt Farley. If it wasn't for you two, Nick and I would not have met him when he came to Orlando a few months ago. We made a new friends and genuinely had one of the best weekends we've ever had in a long time. Thanks for everything. Keep on doing what you're doing because what you do brings joy to a lot of people.
My goodness.
Wow.
I feel like Mr. Holland observing his opus. But no, that's very sweet. Thanks for that.
So our next question. All right. After that, speaking of stuff that's for us, this letter is from ML Kennedy, loyal listener. He's in the Discord a lot too, I believe. He's definitely on Twitter. He goes, "Howdy, Justin and Will. It is going to be a high holy day soon." Oh, wait. So this is from a couple weeks ago. That's right. Fred Olin Ray's 70th birthday on September 10th. I think it is up to all of us North Americans to watch at least 3 Fred Olin Ray movies on this day.
If you can stomach it.
Do you guys have any favorite you'd like to suggest? And yes, suggestions though. Here are my picks for the Fred Olin Ray starter pack. Biohazard. I guess Red Letter Media did this one. It's the one where the monster is a child in an alien suit. Not just any child. That is Fred Olin Ray's kid that is on set in the movie working late nights because no one else could take care of his kid at the time. He also recommends A Christmas Princess, the greatest of the nobody cares made-for-TV Christmas movies. And finally, if you've never seen Droid Gunner, you really owe it to yourself to see a movie that asks, but can we still make money off imitating Blade Runner in 1995? I actually like this movie better than Blade Runner because I have serious brain problems. Thanks for the podcast. And this guy, he has a Fred Olin Ray podcast called Going Over Our Freds. It's the acronym they use is GOOF. So if you want pure Fred Olin Ray content, I would recommend checking that podcast out.
So first of all, you recommend some Fred Olin Ray movies.
Oh, well, I always say I really like Fred's early scrappy movies.
Scalps is
really interesting.
Yeah.
Even though that the final version of that movie is one that Fred didn't really have anything to do with, that he sent in all the footage to a distributor who cut it up without his permission and then released it. But even the Alien Dead, like a very early movie that he did, because there's kind of like that immediacy that disappears from his films, because there is that need to be slicker. And by slicker, you lose a lot from it. I mean, all my favorite Fred Olin Ray films are the ones that he did in weekends in between the bigger budget ones. Even though I really like Arm Response, which I believe was the biggest budget that he had, which is David Carradine and Lee Van Cleef are in the movie, and Fred was working on sets with crews. But then I also love movies that like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers, one of his more famous ones, mostly because I know that he shot it in a couple of days because they got days free when they rented the camera package.
Well, first of all, I recommend any Fred Olin Ray commentary track.
Oh, absolutely.
Justin and I recently listened to the one for Haunting Fear, full of great stories. But I would also recommend, and this isn't a movie, but it is a book, and it's one of my favorite film books of recent years. No bullshit. It's called Writing the Perfect Christmas TV Movie. Fred Olin Ray has made, 15, 20, like Hallmark style Christmas movies. And he wrote this guidebook that explains to you, with no bullshit, how it is that you write one of these movies to make it sell. And it's completely unsentimental. He basically takes the tone of like, look, you're not here to make art. You're here to make a movie that will sell to one of these networks that shows Christmas movies. Here are the things they want. Here are the things they don't want. Do not talk about this. You're structuring your script around the commercial breaks. Here's where the breaks come. Here's what you should put in each act. And say what you want about the Christmas movies. I don't think they're that good.
No.
But it is an amazing insight into just that world and how that world works. Written by a guy that we all love. So check that out. It's on Amazon. He self-published it. Writing the Perfect Christmas TV Movie.
All right. So as per usual, you can send us letters at importantcinemaclubpodcast@gmail.com.
Next week,
very special episode.
Yeah, so this is the one that is really going to rocket us. Like, we're going to overtake Blank Check on the charts with this one.
Do you know they make $80,000 a month?
Blank Check does?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, well, we're gonna make 100,000 after this episode.
You know what? This is the episode. We're so close to 1,000 subscribers. We're so close. Please, if you haven't subscribed, you're like, I get enough on a weekly basis. All the gold is on the Patreon.
Oh, that's right. Oh, we should mention on the Patreon this week, did you like our discussion about the Toronto International Film Festival last week?
Yeah, what will they say behind a paywall about it?
I think as much as I liked that episode, this one...
I think it's better.
It's better
Yeah.
because we're a little looser. We're having a little more fun. And we're telling you what a festival's really like. So check that out. Our second TIFF preview episode where we talk about The Brutalist, Saturday Night, the new Hong Sang-soo film, various Midnight Madness entries, all the stars.
We talk a lot about the Jason Reitman Saturday Night movie about the first airing of Saturday Night Live.
That's right. So check that out. But anyway, next week on this podcast, as I said, this is the one that's going to rocket us to fame. This is going to be such a huge episode. This is your favorite filmmaker, everyone's favorite filmmaker, Chu Yen-ping.
What? Chu Yang-ping, I mean, everybody knows him. So let's try to make sure we don't do the big popular ones. Let's do the bad Chu Yang-ping, right?
Yeah, that's right. Okay.
Wait, who Chu Yang-ping for people that don't know?
You may not know the name Chu Yen-ping. You may know the name Kevin Chu.
Oh, the director of Fantasy Mission Force?
That's right. And
What else is he credited
Island of Fire.
Oh, he's credited as Kevin Chu on Island of Fire? I think he's credited on Kung Fu Slam Dunk as Kevin Chu as well.
Yeah, or Kung Fu Dunk.
Kung Fu Dunk, there you go.
Which is one of the few that's been released over here because it had Jay Chu from the Green Hornet.
Yeah, that brief Jay Chu fever we all had.
So Chu Yanping is a Taiwanese film director. He is wildly prolific.
How are we going to approach this? Like,
According to Letterboxd, Chu Yanping has made 91 films that he's directed,
and
give or take a few.
has many of them, by his own admission, in one of the few interviews I've read about him, forced upon him by perhaps organized crime. That like, you're going to make more movies like this. Yes.
I believe his exact words were, organized crime became interested in the Chu Yanping business.
Yes. That's
So
right.
he was on a treadmill making these movies for bad people. But he is sort of, okay, it's ridiculous to say even this because this is obscure too, but he's the Wong Jing of Taiwan.
Yeah, I think absolutely.
And who's Wong Jing? Well, he's like...
Well, what's this? Wait, is there Chu Yanping films like Flying Dagger that were produced and written by Wong Jing? Yes. Disgusting, I know this off the top. I'm not looking at this. I just looked Will in the eye and I said this.
Yeah. Yeah, Chu Yanping, he's a commercial filmmaker in Taiwan. And he was most active in the 80s and 90s, but he still works. In fact, it's been a while since his last one, but he was working well into the 2010s. Yeah, he's most famous for the 2 Jackie Chan movies that Jackie Chan made because he owed a debt to Jimmy Wang Yu for getting him out of trouble with the triads. And he is not a well-regarded director.
No. He's a trash director,
Yeah.
which he is.
Yeah, he's regarded as trash.
But do we love
He
him?
is trash. I love him.
Yeah.
How many of his movies have you seen that are good? Yeah,
You know what? I could a little bit
Fantasy
less than
Mission
a dozen.
Force.
Book of Heroes is really fun.
Okay, yeah.
Because he does a lot of comedies, which do not really travel that much, unless they have an action element, because that's what usually English-speaking audiences are interested in. And his comedies did very well. That's what he was most famous for early on, working with a comedian that was a Charlie Chaplin type, if you will. That's when the triads got interested and forced him to make a whole bunch of movies in a row.
Okay, I've seen a movie that he made called The Four Sheepish Dummies.
Where, I mean, I love one Charlie Chaplin. What if I had 4 of them, right?
Yeah, you got 4 Charlie Chaplins they're like the Minions,
The
basically.
thing about Chu Yanping films, too, is like most of them, like we can only watch them in the worst looking copies that have ever existed on planet Earth.
Yeah, so here's what I'm going to suggest that we do.
Okay.
We should watch King Swindler, which I have seen.
I have seen.
Yeah.
It's okay.
It's okay. But
It's a Sammo Hung film.
It's got Sammo, and I feel like it's very like quintessential. We should watch Shaolin Popeye.
Okay, yep.
Don't you think?
Yeah, I agree. That's one of his big popular movies. So popular that he made those in the 90s and then he returned to the franchise in the 2010s.
Yeah. We should watch A Home Too Far.
Yeah, the Andy Lau one.
Right. And this is a Taiwanese war movie that he considers his best film. And if we have time, Kung Fu Dunk.
Yeah. I've seen Kung Fu Dunk many, many years ago, but it's interesting as like late period style. Like how
That's
is he kind of adapting when most filmmakers are not really like that were around in like the early 80s, 70s. They're not still making films in the 2000s.
Right.
So yeah, I'm going to be honest. I've seen all the films he made in the 2000s, like Treasure Inn. Like I saw all of those.
Hell yeah. And I mean, God, we're not even getting into like his Bridget Lynn, like woman warrior films here. I mean, this is a rich career, guys.
I mean, you have said since the beginning of this podcast that if you had nothing else to do, you would just watch his entire filmography, mostly based on your love of Fantasy Mission Force.
yes, but I've also in the other films of his I've seen glimmers of things I like.
Yeah, but the thing is, you wonder like, is there another Fantasy Mission Force in there that no one has seen? I'm gonna say no.
No.
Yeah.
But also, sometimes here's my case for Chu Yanping just going.
You don't need to make a case for me.
Yeah, I
but
know.
yeah, for the people.
Like sometimes it's interesting to watch another culture's trash. You know,
Especially that it is successful because he continues doing it. There's a reason that he keeps making movies.
and I have a basic respect for Chu Yanping as a guy who is like on a treadmill just getting it done. So let's come with me next week.
Yeah.
Let's learn about Chu Yanping.
Yep. And then, I mean, we're getting up to episode 400. We have a big one.
We have a plan.
Yeah, we have a plan. So stay tuned for that. We won't announce it like we did last year. And it ended up being Shrek.
Yeah.
But it's not Shrek again. What if it was Shrek? We're doing Puss in Boots.
I love the idea of making a Shrek again, but I can't.
You can't.
I can't.
Yeah. Every 100 episodes, we revisit the Shrek movies. So until next week, my name's Justin Clue.
I'm Will Sloan.
Thanks for listening.
This
it's starting to get that season, spooky season. And as I've done the last few years, I will be hosting a 24-hour horror movie mind melter online. So the first weekend of October, check it out. Join with us, watch a few movies, watch all of the movies, maybe discover something terrifying at the 24-hour horror movie mind melter. For more information and the link of where you can watch it, check it out on my Twitter account, DeClueJ, or just search Justin DeClue, DeClous, for more information. Hope to see you there. And as per usual, I'd like to thank some of the new patrons who include Chris, Kathleen Cummings, Christopher Small, Michael Viniz, Jarrett, Gold member, I hear they love gold, Grace, Sasha Kingston Wayne, Fightin' Fords, Evan Jones, Chris M, John, Goose with a Little Hat, Greg McDonald, Giallo Zilla, Chris Shomiel, Neil Roberts, Sean Morrison, William Waterhouse, and Patrick Carroll. Thank you very much for becoming patrons. We could not keep doing this without you.
So I just got Eric Roberts' autobiography. This is a big event on the Important Cinema Club calendar.
This is the second time, I believe, it's been back matter content.
And I'll tell you something. So I've ordered the signed copy. And
you paid the big bucks.
Yeah, I paid the big bucks. And it's been taking too long to arrive. So then today...
Did you? Oh my God.
Today,
you bought a copy before you get your signed one.
I bought a Kindle edition.
Okay.
So I paid like a third of the regular price for it. Because I was just like, okay, Kindle price is like the price of a movie ticket. I would pay that now so I can start reading it.
I will say, it feels like there's not that much juicy stuff based on, I haven't seen people retweeting passages from it.
Right. So I've been flipping around. I'm going to give it a really concentrated read soon.
Will's a very like Jean-Luc Godard kind of guy when he gets autobiographies where he's like jumps at the end because that's what you want to hear about.
Well, I always want to hear about the end.
Yeah.
That's where like the worst movies.
Yep.
So
the movies you want to hear about, like Eric Roberts, A Talking Cat.
Well, because I thought Eric Roberts has made 800 movies. Does he even remember A Talking Cat? Is he going to mention it? Well, this book is co-written by like a real author.
Yeah, so it's not, Eric Roberts just typing it out himself or probably dictating it and then just publishing it.
Right. It's an actual author.
Who's putting this out? Is it Simon & Schuster or like a big company?
It's a big company.
Okay.
And it's a proper book and it's well written. And so the co-author probably knows, like he knows what to ask. He knows what movies to put in there. So yes, A Talking Cat gets a paragraph.
Yeah! And I mean, that's as much as it deserves considering he probably only recorded for an hour.
15 minutes.
According to David Dakota, into the mic on his camera because he forgot his actual microphone.
That's right. So he writes, in 2015, I appeared in a movie some people think was the nadir of my career. I disagree. In A Talking Cat, I was the voice of Duffy, a cat, etc., etc., etc. The movie went straight to DVD. Who cares? I like doing offbeat and sometimes silly things, and I also love cats. Besides, it's the kind of movie my grandkids will love. And without variety, how can you sustain a career such as mine?
Also, I've not seen A Talking Cat. You should probably add that part as well.
Yeah, he definitely hasn't. But I love that attitude. It almost brings me to tears, Like, and also I love that he says, so the movie went straight to DVD. It's like, oh yeah, unlike all those other Eric Roberts movies that are playing at every multiplex in America.
What do you mean? Babylon, the cable guy? Who does he play? Oh, he plays himself. In like a made-for-TV movie.
Well, if you look at Eric Roberts' Letterboxd, it gives you an inaccurate view of what his career is.
The Dark Knight.
Yeah, because, Dark Knight, Babylon, all that's at the top. The movies where he really made his bones, like King of the Gypsies, Star 80.
Yep, those are at the bottom.
Runaway Train. No, they're not at the bottom. No.
We got to do an Eric Roberts episode. Maybe that's episode 400. Let's throw that in the file.
I'd love to do an Eric Roberts episode. So the other thing is, like, I'm reading this Eric Roberts book. I'm flipping around because, like, I want the dirt. It's like, tell me about Julia. Tell me about Emma.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm not proud of this. Okay.
No,
But hey.
What, you? A gossip hound? No.
I'm just saying, why do you think Simon & Schuster's putting the book out?
Yeah.
Right?
They want, where did you look up another one of your favorite filmmakers in Eric Roberts' experience with them? Mr. Frank D'Angelo.
Okay, I haven't yet, but I should check if he even remembers. Most people don't know Frank D'Angelo, so I bet it's not in there. But I did look up, tell me about Julia, and you're reading it, it's like, okay, this is very tastefully written.
Oh, so it's not like a hit piece, which you were probably hoping for.
No, he's obviously like trying his best to make amends to some degree that he can. But also, all his stuff about his family in this book is like really sad.
Yeah, and not like in a fun way.
Not in a fun way, just in a kind of like, oh yeah, like deep traumas, you live with the impacts of them for the rest of your life, and some relationships never get healed, and oh geez, that is very sad. Yeah. So if you're looking to Eric Roberts biography for like, I mean, there's fun stories about people that he knew.
I mean, I'm sure most of it is probably also related to the alcoholism that he struggled with his entire life.
Well, there seem to be two like big traumas. First, like he didn't get along with his parents. And then secondly, yeah, like cocaine addiction completely wrecked his life and his career and everything and destroyed his relationship with his family. And I find Eric Roberts' career right now kind of moving because he writes in the book, or he says in the book, that his psychiatrist told him that he has an addictive personality. And so it's better to channel that addiction to becoming a workaholic.
Into something, prolific.
Yeah.
That doesn't hurt anyone or himself.
Yeah. So he's just making movie after movie.
Doesn't hurt anyone. The people watching the movies, I guess.
Well, at this point, if you're watching a movie with Eric Roberts in it, like
he's still enough of a name that he'll get money for a movie to get made.
Well, as he says, he gets offered like 30 roles a day.
Wow.
He's just, and they're
Maybe
not
it's
real.
too much. Yeah,
they're not
not
real
real
roles. Yeah.
Does he know that? Does he kind of discuss that? He's just like, a set's a set's a set.
He absolutely knows. I mean, I think he likes, listen, he knows when he's on a Paul Thomas Anderson movie and he knows when he's in a fucking shit movie, which is most of the
he does
time.
a lot of TV too. He had like a recurring role on
by
Suits.
My Doctor.
Yeah. Those TV movies.
Oh, the other thing that actually really moved me that I read so far was he's talking about The Righteous Gemstones, which is one of his higher profile gigs of late.
Yeah, recently.
And he's writing about how much he loved this role, how much it meant to him, how many
episodes was he in? I never watched Righteous Gemstones.
I don't think he ever quite became a regular.
Okay.
But he's talking about how he lost 20 pounds for the role and he really threw himself into it. And then when they didn't keep the character on, it like really broke his heart. And he really wished he could have continued. And it's like, somebody give this man another good role.
Because just give him a good role.
Yeah, a good director come along. Because I actually think a question that I had before reading about that passage was, have his muscles just atrophied at this point?
Yeah.
Just too many bad movies?
He's in 7 episodes of The Righteous Gemstones, so he's in quite a bit.
Yeah.
But they haven't, though. Because you see him in better movies, even Babylon, where he doesn't have a big role.
He's cute.
He's cute in there.
Yeah,
they haven't atrophied. But the thing about Eric Roberts, too, is that he was always a ham.
Oh, yeah.
Like even King of the Gypsies, Runaway Train, where he's playing a simple man, if you will.
Yes, yeah.
Like he always had that there, and he's not like sleepwalking through. Some of them he is.
Well, his recent movies, yeah.
But I haven't seen the Stalked by My Doctor film. People love them. They love those movies.
I keep meaning to watch those. Yeah.
I mean, boot them up, you and Dancy. There's a night there.
I'd love to.
Stalking with My Doctor. I don't think this is the last of the Eric Roberts. You reminding me this. I got to get it. I'll read it. We will discuss again what he has to say about it in this book.